Hello, welcome to the third micro-learning session prepared for the Spur Change Capacity Building and Knowledge Sharing for Small and Medium Organizations program. This presentation will focus on qualitative data collection. The essence of qualitative data collection is that it captures people's experiences, opinions, attitudes, and feelings. Focus group discussions and interviews will be the focus of this micro session, as these are the most common forms of qualitative data collection. In the second micro session, I discussed the advantages and limitations to qualitative data collection. A review of these is provided on this slide. Planning for qualitative data collection requires a plan for sampling of respondents and a data collection tool that asks good questions. It also requires logistical planning. Of utmost importance for qualitative data collection is a moderator who has good technical and communication skills. This last point is highlighted red on this slide because of its importance. The quality of qualitative data collection is dependent on the ability of the data collector to interact with respondents in a manner that is supportive, safe, and respectful. The importance of training data collectors cannot be understated. Qualitative data is not easy to collect, and facilitators require skills. A link is provided for more comprehensive information regarding training of qualitative data collectors. As you prepare to collect qualitative data, think about all your potential target informants and develop a plan for who will be included in data collection. Putting this plan on paper is important because it will help you organize your thinking. This slide provides an example of a sampling plan for qualitative data collection for a maternal and newborn child health program. The plan identifies 3 target groups, which are community members, health providers, and a third group referred to as other stakeholders. Under the target group of community members, 4 subgroups are identified. These are new mothers who are older than 20 years of age, new mothers who are between the ages of 15 to 19 years, new fathers who are older than 20 years, and new fathers who are between the ages of 15 and 19 years. Possibly other subgroups could be identified for this project, such as grandmothers or grandfathers, but are not included on this sample plan. Notice that this plan disaggregates respondents by gender, so male and female, and age, new mothers and fathers who are over 20 years of age, and new mothers and fathers who are between the ages of 15 and 19 years. Disaggregating data by vulnerability factors such as gender and age or other variables that may be appropriate to your project is important. This sample plan includes columns to indicate how many focus group discussions or key informant interviews are planned with each subgroup. For the first subgroup of new mothers who are over 20 years of age, I have included inclusion and exclusion criteria on the sampling plan to give you an example of how you might want to think about who you will include or exclude from your subgroups. In your sampling plan, you may want to add other columns, such as a column for how you will recruit participants or who will facilitate the focus group discussion or key informant interview. While you are developing your sampling plan, think about the area where you plan to work. The map provided on this slide is one way you might want to think about the distribution of where you will collect qualitative data. Wherever feasible, try to collect data from a wide variety of regions and stakeholders that will represent your project. Collecting data from only easy-to-reach locations or from respondents who are easy to gather information from will bias your data. Over the next few slides, we will discuss strategies for asking good questions. However, before we think about good questions, we must think about our communication style. Our communication style is affected by our expectations. Without knowing it, we expect others to react like we do. An important part of training is to encourage data collectors to examine their own communication style and expectations. A good communication style asks questions about the other person's ideas and feelings and withholds our own opinions. This slide discusses 3 types of questions: closed questions, biased or leading questions, and open questions. While closed questions are sometimes useful to start a conversation, our goal should always be to focus on open questions. Wherever possible, a qualitative data collector needs to understand what is a biased question and how to avoid this type of question. Closed questions are usually answered with a yes or a no or a number answer. An example of a closed question could be, did you like the chorus? Biased questions are often used to confirm the idea or opinion of the data collector. They often imply its own answer. An example of a biased or leading question is, do you agree that the chorus was very good? Open questions ask the person to describe something. There is no right or wrong answer. Open questions communicate a wish to learn and understand the intention of the respondent. An example of an open question could be, tell me what it was like for you when you attended the course. This slide provides some examples of how you may start to ask good qualitative questions. Good questions often start with the words what, how, when, where, who, or from whom. As you move deeper into qualitative data collection, you may ask a respondent if he or she can think of an example, or you may ask in what ways he or she understands something. You may ask a respondent to describe what happened and how he or she feels about it. You may ask the respondent to tell you what happened next or to describe it. A good way to get deeper into a conversation with a qualitative informant is to ask, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Wherever possible, avoid starting qualitative questions with the word why. Why often makes people feel uncomfortable. It can make people feel judged, and they may feel the need to defend themselves. Why questions can lead to bias and ruin communication between a data collector and a respondent. Look at the example provided on this slide to understand how it is that a why question can cause a problem in qualitative data collection. For your project, you will need to develop an interview protocol that is unique to your project. The sample interview protocol provided on this slide can be customized for either a focus group discussion or a key informant interview. It provides space for an introduction which will be read by the data collector. In your interview protocol, you may also want to add a section on background information. Including a section in your interview protocol that explicitly outlines consent is important. It is important that your data collector understands that he or she must read the consent statement exactly as it is written on the protocol and then obtain either written or verbal consent depending on how you have set up consent for your project. An interview protocol should never be a final document. The data collector must have the skills to use the pre-formed questions as guides to develop the flow of the conversation as the interview unfolds. Probes help the facilitator pre-think questions that may move the conversation to a deeper level of understanding. Qualitative data collection is meant to be an ongoing process. As you begin collecting data, you may add questions or probes to your interview protocol. You may find that you need to ask questions differently. You may find entirely new topics that you want to explore, or you may find that certain questions are not providing meaningful data and you may choose to remove them. The facilitator is the person who conducts the interview. This slide focuses on the role of the facilitator for a focus group discussion. However, the guidelines can be modified for a key informant interview. In a focus group discussion, the role of the facilitator is to introduce everyone and create a comfortable and safe environment. The facilitator should also provide information about the project and explain consent. The facilitator should also establish the ground rules for the focus group discussion. This will be explained on the next slide. The facilitator guides the discussion and wherever possible with open and probing questions. The facilitator should watch for novel contributions. This may be an opportunity for the facilitator to move the conversation in an unexpected direction. The facilitator should also watch for participants who dominate the conversation or quiet participants, and wherever possible, create a space for more timid participants to have their voice heard. It is the role of the facilitator to listen closely to the conversation, keeping the conversation on topic and moving intuitively with the flow of the conversation. The facilitator should move through the interview protocol, being sure to cover all the topics within the amount of time allotted and not allow the session to continue beyond the time the participants agreed to spend participating. This is a matter of respect for the respondents. It is important that the facilitator open the conversation to questions at the end of the focus group discussion. Finally, the facilitator should remember to thank the respondents for attending today. A good strategy for starting a focus group discussion is to use a flip chart to brainstorm ground rules at the beginning of the discussion. Ground rules create a safe space where people may be more willing to discuss their thoughts and feelings. Ground rules that should be expected in every focus group discussion include that there are no right or wrong answers and everyone's contribution is important. It should be stated that everyone will get the chance to talk and that participants should not interrupt each other. A good ground rule is to ask that everyone turn off their mobile phones. Importantly, participants need to agree that the conversation is confidential. As you brainstorm, participants may identify other ground rules, which should be encouraged and can be added to the list. Finally, I want to cover a few points related to logistical planning. In particular, I want to cover some tips for using an audio recorder. First, always be sure to use 2 audio recorders. This is important because if one audio recorder breaks down, your discussion will be recorded on the second recorder. Second, be sure that you are using a good quality digital recorder, which will make it possible for you to download the audio recordings onto your computer and will greatly ease the task of transcription. It is very important that you ensure that you have a quiet location when you audio record. Noises that you might not notice, such as wind, vehicles, music, or children playing in the background, can ruin your audio recording and make it impossible to decipher the content. Finally, before you head out to the field, test your audio recorders. With regards to other logistical planning, it is important to think about translation of your interview protocol. Best practice for translating any document is to have it translated from the first to the second language and then translate it back to the first language. This is called back translation. Also, please remember to plan for consent for your data collection. As well, be sure to organize for permission from the appropriate authorities before you head out to collect data. Also, organize a location that prioritizes privacy and confidentiality. Remember to give your participants sufficient notice about the date and time for the interview or focus group discussion. This demonstrates respect for your participants. Also, think about incentives. Decide if you will provide snacks or some other form of thank you for participation. With regards to incentives, please be careful about what you provide. Generally, a small token incentive is acceptable, but large incentives that may appear to bribe or coerce people are not acceptable. Also, consider if participants will travel to attend the discussion and if they will be compensated for these costs. Again, be careful with compensation. It should be roughly equivalent to what it would really cost to travel. Finally, consider the need for childcare, especially if your participants are women. Often women will need to bring children with them in order to participate. Providing childcare might encourage women to attend your data collection and will enable women or caregivers to focus on the interview or the focus group discussion. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this micro-learning session on baseline data collection. Please take the time to review the summary sheet that accompanies the session.